Now, no one mentions academics. Everybody, not everybody, just the agent. All they ask for is how much? How much are you willing to pay? I had one agent say to me, if you want to recruit this kid, it starts at $1 million. So it sounded like an auction to me. Right? And the highest bidder was going to win.
All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. And March Madness has ended, so I figured what better thing to cut to the chase to than to bring on Coach Larrañaga, Jim Larrañaga, to give a wrap on the season, get an update on what he's doing, because I know all of you know that he retired from coaching last year, unfortunately, and his take on the NIL and the transfer portal and all that good stuff. So how you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great, Greg. I'm keeping very busy and I'm enjoying life.
All right, I know you are, and you're a great guy. Everybody loves you. I love you to pieces. I don't even know you. Now I do. All right, so a little background. I know everybody knows Coach L, but I just want to put a couple things that, into perspective on his background. He was drafted in 1971 by the Detroit Pistons in the
Yes,
sixth
that's
round.
exactly right.
In the sixth round. Nowadays they don't go
They
past
didn't have a sixth round.
the. And interestingly enough, we actually share two universities. You started out Terry Holland, Davidson. Then at some point not in the mid 1980s, both of us were at University of Virginia. You
Yeah.
were an assistant coach, and the superstar of all superstars, Ralph Sampson, came there, got a couple Final Fours under your belt, 744 wins, coach of the year several times. 2005 did a miraculous job with George Mason. Who has even heard of George Mason? Got to the Final Fours. This is all before the NIL. 2011, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's going to my school, my other school, the University of Miami, where he coached the Miami Hurricanes for 13 years and also got them to a Final Four. So I know that was a lot, but Jim, I want everybody to know the extent of your background and our commonality.
Yep. I coached for 53 years. I grew up in the Bronx in New York City. I went to Archbishop Malloy High School and then Providence College. I coached at Davidson for 5 years. I coached in Europe for 1 year. And I coached at American International College in Springfield, Massachusetts for 2 years, 7 years at Virginia, 11 years at Bowling Green, 14 years at George Mason. I just finished my 14th year at Miami. So I've been around the block a time or two.
All right, so quickly, how was retirement treating you? I know you're not fully retired and you're going back out, swinging the bat, so to speak. What's
Well,
going on?
when people say retired, you tend to think the guy who's retiring is going out and playing golf or pickleball. No, what I'm doing is I am working at the university as kind of an ambassador. I'm going to teach at the university. I'm going to teach in the School of Education and Sports Management Department. I'm going to, uh, uh, I do a radio show on Thursday. So as soon as I get off with you, Greg, I got a radio show to do. I am writing a book. I've hired a literary agent and a collaborator, and we're working together so I can write a book and tell some of the great stories throughout my life, not just as a coach working with players or basketball games, much more about my role as a leader in the community and my philosophy about teaching. I've always been a teacher at heart and working with the players. Basketball happened to be my subject, but I wanted to prepare our players for when they're no longer playing basketball.
This world needs lots more people like you, Jim. I don't know if you can do anything about that, but in your teaching and your endeavors, I know you're making a huge impact on everybody. And I know you've got another show. Another fun fact about you that I don't think the audience might not know about is that you've never eaten a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So
That is true.
my follow up to this, and this is a topic that has sort of been bewildering me, is what about a bologna sandwich? Have you had a bologna
Oh
sandwich?
yeah.
All right, now
Yeah.
have you seen a bologna sandwich being sold anywhere in the last? I have not seen a bologna sandwich on a menu in a long time.
Well, Greg, this is what I would tell you. I don't like eating. I know that might sound strange, but I would prefer if I wasn't hungry, I wouldn't eat. I don't like food that much. When I was growing up in the Bronx, I had an hour and a half trip from the Bronx to Queens to go to Archbishop Malloy High School. I get up every morning at 6:30 and be out of the house by 6:45. My mother made me a bacon sandwich every morning, and to drink, I'd have what is called an eggnog: milk, a cracked egg, a raw egg in there, a scoop of Nestle's Quick, maybe a scoop of ice cream, throw it in the blender. I'd drink that. I'd have a bacon sandwich to go with it. And that was my breakfast every day for my 4 years of high school.
That's amazing. And you don't look like someone that doesn't like to eat. I'm kidding. No, all right. So we got to get it. We got to cut to the chase and get to March Madness. So March Madness, listen, Canes and all that. The Gators, third time they won the championship, and also they've won three football championships. So, I guess I got to go Gators. How does that? I mean, just I know you're a Cane at heart. Are you okay with the Gators winning? How do you process that?
Well, here's what I would tell you and your audience that's listening to this podcast. The first thing is, Billy Donovan was a great coach at the University of Florida. I admired the work he did. I was at George Mason at the time. My George Mason team made it to the Final Four in 2006. We beat Michigan State, we beat North Carolina, we beat Wichita State, and we beat Connecticut. But then we faced Billy Donovan's Florida Gators in the semifinals. We couldn't beat them. Not with Joakim Noah and Al Horford and Torian Green, Corey Brewer, Humphreys. Those guys were great. And Billy Donovan not only won it in '06, but he turned around and repeated in '07. And so Billy did a great job. I moved to the University of Miami in 2011. We actually played the Gators a couple of times when Billy was still the head coach. We took our Miami team with Angel Rodriguez to Gainesville and beat them at the buzzer when they had a 32 or 34 home game winning streak. And then they came back here the next year and we beat them again. All right. Then Billy went off to become the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. A few years ago, 3 years ago, Todd Golden got the head coaching job and called us and asked us if we'd like to scrimmage. So we didn't play a regular season game, but we went back-to-back years. One year we went to Gainesville, and it was a very close game. You could see that Florida's team was very good and getting stronger and stronger. The second year, they came to our place and actually beat us in a close game. And I told my, excuse me, I told my coaching staff afterwards, they've really got it rolling. They've got some really good big guys. They've got some depth. They got some speed, and they got a great way to play. So they had a great season last year, and then they turned around and followed that up with a run to the Final Four and then winning the national championship. So you got to give Todd and his staff and his players all the credit in the world.
Yeah, you do, and I'm good with that, and that's, I'm happy for them and all my friends. Half of my friends are Gators and all that, and that's okay. I'm good with that. So, all right, let me ask you this. So now we got March Madness. We had four Final Four teams that were number one seeds. I don't even remember if there were any upsets after the Sweet 16. I don't think I saw Sister Jean one time on TV. Okay. And was there a Cinderella story? So, all right, here's the big question is the NIL. I know you retired and the headlines were, connected to the NIL with your decision. I don't really know. I'm not asking you to go into that, but I know that to my two favorite coaches at the time, you and Tony Bennett from University of Virginia left, and was it NIL? So let's go into that. I mean, did the NIL? What's your take on the NIL? Has this killed March Madness?
Okay, well, first, let's talk about the landscape we're in right now and what created it. In 1996, I believe, the national championship was held in either Charlotte or maybe New Jersey at the Meadowlands. But it was the last time it was played in an NBA arena. Then it shifted to these football stadiums. And now the television package was worth in the billions. CBS had invested an incredible amount of money in March Madness. And so the NCAA was getting richer and richer. But the young men that were making March Madness what it has become, the best sporting event in the world for a 3 week period in March, they weren't getting rewarded for that. So there were lawsuits filed against the NCAA. Eventually, the lawsuits won, and the rules had to change. So the NCAA used to have a gazillion rules. You couldn't buy a kid a meal. You couldn't take a recruit out in his hometown and treat him. The funny thing is, and Greg, I don't know how old you are to remember this, but when I was in high school, I was being recruited, and one of the local schools called me and invited me to a Broadway show. They said, "Hey, ask if you have a girlfriend, ask your girlfriend. We're going to go out for a steak dinner in downtown Manhattan. Then we're going to go to a Broadway show." We saw Hello, Dolly. I absolutely loved it. The assistant coach and his wife took me and my girlfriend out. We had a blast. And then a few weeks later, that same coach called me and said, "Would you like to go to Madison Square Garden and watch the Knicks play?" So I went there. There were not a lot of rules back in the 60s. And then everything changed. There were 500 pages of rules. Now it's gone back where there's basically not a lot of rules. So the landscape has changed. And what has happened is the Ed O'Bannon rule took place, where you can actually have your players earn money through NIL. Well, NIL means name, image, and likeness, which means kids could do commercials. You see a kid doing a McDonald's commercial or a Gatorade commercial, like the NBA players do. That's what it's supposed to be like, but it's really not. We have collectives that raise money from boosters, and then that money is distributed amongst the best players. So what happened several years ago is kids started to get paid a certain amount of money. And you can't begrudge the kids who wouldn't want to be paid to play college basketball. It is like a job. These kids are putting in 20, 30 hours a week. They work, with the coaches 20 hours, and then on their own, they have skill development guys, they have shooting coaches. So it's really like a professional atmosphere at the college level. So now all the kids were hiring agents. You hire an agent, and that guy's going to negotiate your contract. Well, after we reached the Final Four, 8 of my players came in and said, "I'm going to transfer, put my name in the portal so I can get paid. I
Mm.
want to get paid." So, hey, I have no problem with that. But
Yeah.
I talked to our people, and we got in the business, and so we have a collective. And now you add revenue sharing. That's the new thing. Is going to be revenue sharing and NIL. So you have two pots of gold, and kids can probably dip into to both pots to make the money. So my feeling was, I'm not used to this. I'm not of the mindset that I want to pay kids millions of dollars. I think it's great they're making the money, but I wasn't suited for that new normal. So I stepped away. I've turned things back to my staff, and now the university has hired a new coach. He'll bring on his whole new staff. They'll get a whole new collection of players, just like everybody else in the country is doing.
All right. So that new coach, Jay Lucas, what do you know of Jay? And he's already hit the he's already gotten 4 transfers.
Yeah. Oh, and he's going to have to get 8 or 9 more.
Yeah.
It's not like you get 3 or 4. Last year, we had 10 new players on our roster. And that was, kind of uh, away from my philosophy as a coach. I've always seen myself as a teacher. I like bringing in a freshman and helping him develop, like an Isaiah Wong. He came in. He had an okay freshman year, a little better sophomore year. He kept improving. Junior year, he was an all-conference caliber player, and senior year, he was a ACC Player of the Year and an NBA draft choice. So I like to see that the teaching and the development, not only on the court but off the court. I want to see those players graduate, which all my players have graduated who have stayed for 4 years. Isaiah Wong graduated that year. Anthony Walker graduated. Jordan Miller graduated. These guys who stay and they work on their degrees and earn their degree. Now, no one mentions academics. Everybody, not everybody, just the agent. All they ask for is how much? How much are you willing to pay? I had one agent say to me, if you want to recruit this kid, it starts at $1 million. So it sounded like an auction to me,
Hmm.
right? And the highest bidder was going to win.
Look, us old school people, I'm 59. My first memories of college basketball, you had to play 4 years before you get drafted in the NBA. And then I think it was what, Spencer Haywood filed the lawsuit. He was an amazing talent. And so then all of a sudden it was 3 years, and then it was one and done. And for me, in my perspective, yeah, I love all sports. I can't spend my entire life, like honing in. And what I liked about the college game was back then you got to know the players on the team and you saw them develop, guys like Isaiah Wong or whatever. I mean, you had a good time watching their career develop. But now it's like I don't even know. I don't know anybody on in the sport, just the big names, because it's kind of taken the juice out of it for me to follow. All right, they're here for a year, and then where are they going? And I mean, going back to the Final Four and the March Madness, do you see a connection with how this is playing out and the fact that you had four teams, all number one seeds in the Final Four, nobody from the mid majors. You don't have any George Masons, getting in there, the top final eight and all that. So I mean, I know where I stand up. Where do you stand on it?
Okay, well, first of all, the four teams that made it to this year's Final Four were tremendous teams. Their coaches did an incredible job. And I was so impressed with the level of play by the players. So, in one sense, college basketball is being played by older guys. There were no five-star McDonald All-American freshmen in the Final Four. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. Duke had Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple. They were five-star. Duke did have some five-star guys, but for the most part, the NCAA tournament, because of the transfer portal and NIL, has now really been a showcase of older guys who are 22, 23 years old, some 24 and 25, who have been around the block or two. It's harder for a freshman, unless he's sensational like a Cooper Flagg, to really have a big impact on winning. And so I think there was several rules that came into place. One was how the selection process now has moved to teams that win it against quad one and quad two opponents. So understand this: if and when I was the head coach of George Mason as a mid-major coach, it's hard to schedule quad one and quad two teams if you're any good at the mid-major level, because none of those high major teams want to take a chance on losing. So you might be able to get one or two quad one, quad two games, and then you got to win them to impress the committee. Uh, but if you don't, if you either lose or you're not able to schedule them, how are you supposed to impress the committee when you don't have any quad one or quad two games or quad one or quad two wins? So you're not going as a mid major. So the only mid majors to go very, very rarely is an at large. Mostly they're just the tournament champions. So it's gone back in the direction of all the high majors. One of my suggestions for years is expand the tournament to 96 so you can expand the field and get a little bit more and have the at-large teams play the tournament champions and really see who's better. Are the teams that finish first in their league better than the teams that the committee selected? But that's not going to happen. We're at 68. There's talk we might go to 72, but it's not going to go to 96 anytime in the near future.
Yeah. So some of my Kane homies know that I brought you on, and they're all like, "Oh my God, you've got to ask him." All right. So speaking of fixes, I'm going to segue to my buddy Ernie wants to know if you have any recommendations to fix or make the NIL and the transfer portal better.
Well, the answer is we need leadership, we need organization, we need rules, uh, and we need to make this more professional and more transparent. Right? We have to we have a perfect role model in the NBA. Right? This organization, the National Basketball Association, has done it for decades and decades, and the NBA is doing fantastic. Right? All their athletes are making a fortune playing professional basketball. Well, let's examine what they've done. They've got a collective bargaining agreement. They are employees of the franchise. Right? They have the freedom to earn money in addition to their salaries. They can make money doing NIL, doing commercials and endorsements and what have you. We see that all the time. I used to love watching, Steph Curry's commercials, right? With Subway, what have you. You see Charles Barkley, he's got NIL. I mean, he's all over the place. Shaquille O'Neal, he's got like 50 endorsements of from an insurance company to all over all over the place. So if we really want uh, college athletics to be run like a professional organization, we need to run it that way. We need to have rules. We need to have guidelines so that coaches know what they can do. One of the disturbing things to me is when I spoke to agents, I couldn't tell if they were being honest with me about what the young man was being offered by other schools because someone told one of the kids we weren't even recruiting how much we were offering. It was on the internet. One of the fathers said, Miami's offering my son $500,000. We weren't even recruiting the kid.
Yeah.
But at the school store, Miami's offering him this. So in order to get to the game, we'd have to offer that or more. And it wasn't true. It
Yeah.
wasn't nearly true. We weren't even recruiting the guy.
Yeah, that's the modern world now. Anybody can post anything on the internet. So, that's the way. I want to ask you another. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal about the value. They actually did valuations of these schools' programs. And interestingly enough, they did the valuation, they did an evaluation on the UConn female basketball team, and they
Right.
valued it almost at $100 million, which kind of triggered me into thinking, are there any female athletes that are getting these NIL gigs?
Oh, well, for sure. If you're really looking at all of female athletes, the answer is definitely yes. At the University of Miami, we have two of the most popular young ladies in Haley and Hannah Cavender, who have, if I heard them correctly at one time before the season started, they had seven different NIL deals,
Nice.
seven legitimate. They were working with food companies and drink companies and clothing companies and makeup companies, and they were endorsing all these products. They are all over the internet, and people by the hundreds of thousands are following these young ladies. They're very, very popular. And I think there are gymnasts. There's a young lady from LSU. I don't know her name, but I understand she's making a fortune on NIL because she's very popular. And there are kids that are influencers that are all over the internet and people follow them and they get a lot of endorsements. That is really legitimate NIL. A lot of the basketball players and football players, they're not doing any commercials. They're not endorsing products. They're just getting paid.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they've got an Instagram, platform or whatever, and they got followers. I guess that's their NIL commitment. I hear you. All right, I know you got to run. I got three quick questions, and then I know you got bigger and better things to do. One of them is from my one of my good buddies, Dr. Becker. He wants to know, he knows that you were Ralph Sampson's assistant coach. And at that time, people were, some Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, they were leaving early, but Ralph stayed the 4 years. Do you like, was that an issue? Was Ralph thinking of going, or you remember that? Was that even a topic?
Do I remember? That was the biggest part of my life for 4.5 years. So I arrived at the University of Virginia in April of 1979, and Ralph was a senior in high school that year. And my first responsibility as an assistant coach was to follow Ralph around to all the all-star games that he was playing in. And I got a chance to get to know him. When he came to the campus, I had a chance to show him around campus on his official visit. He didn't take his official visit until April. And then he didn't make his decision until June 1st of his senior year in high school. So we're actually going back to that now because guys in the portal enter in April. They're making up their minds in May and June.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different because Ralph was a high school player at the time. I worked with Ralph every day for 4 years. One season, his sophomore year, he broke his ring finger on his shooting hand, and he came into practice with his street clothes on. And I sent him back to the locker room to put him in, in his practice gear. And I said, "No, you got a good left hand. We're going to work on your left hand now." So I worked with Ralph throughout his career. And Ralph's mom, Sarah Sampson, wonderful lady, she was more interested in Ralph getting a quality education. She said the basketball will be there for him. He's not in a rush to get to the NBA. And Ralph stayed after freshman year when he could have been the first player chosen. Boston Celtics told him that. Sophomore year, junior year, and then after his senior year, he was the first player chosen. And he had a Hall of Fame type career going until injuries
Um,
eliminated a lot of the opportunities for him to succeed and be one of the greatest players in the history of the game because he
yeah.
was certainly headed in that direction.
It was. It was a shame. But a lot of the bigger guys, Greg Oden, a couple of the Chinese guy, Yao Ming, they just couldn't handle it, I guess, physically over time, which is too bad. All right, I know you got to run, so I got two more quick questions here. CP, my buddy from high school or whatever, he wants to know if you think Jay Lucas is the right person for the job and if you have high hopes and expectations for him.
Well, the answer to that is, of course, I'm hoping Jay does a fantastic job. I love the University of Miami. I want to see the basketball program back in the Final Four and win a national championship. That was my goal when I came here. We got to the Elite Eight. We got to the Final Four. We fell short of that one everlasting goal of cutting down the nets in April. Um, and I think Jay is heading in the right direction. He's putting a quality staff together. He's doing good in the portal, but he's a young man. And anytime you take over a new program, there's always some growing pains.
Yeah.
I know when I arrived at the University of Miami, there were a lot of things my staff and I needed to do. We needed to establish our culture, and Jay is going to establish his own. He comes from a history of great basketball. His dad, John Lucas, who's a friend of mine and has been since 1971. We've known each other that long. Uh, his he John was not only a great player at Maryland, he was the first player chosen in the NBA draft. He's been an NBA coach. He runs an AAU program in Houston, Texas. He's associated with the Houston Rockets, and all of his sons came up as basketball players. Jay Lucas was at Florida. He was at Texas. He's at Kentucky. He was at Duke. So he's learned from the best how to run a program. And now the difference is, as an assistant coach, you're making suggestions. As a head coach, you're making all the decisions. And there's a lot of decisions to make.
All right, I'm sold, but every year I'm drinking the Canes cocktail no matter what. Football, basketball, I'm in. I'm all in. I'm always, everything they're doing, I think is the right thing. And I do think that Jay's going to be amazing. All right, last question, because I know you have another show you got to go to. Tell me your favorite sports movie and why.
Oh, wow. Uh, Yeah, I have a bunch of favorites, and the one I'm going to tell you, it'll make sense to everybody. Probably is Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Uh, but I also, and this is kind of funny. I liked a League of Their Own about um, women's baseball. That I thought was a great movie. I love Tom Hanks. I love the whole storyline. I didn't know about women playing baseball until that movie came out.
Yeah.
Hoosiers, as soon as you see Gene Hackman as a coach, you're
Yeah.
thinking to yourself, oh, this is going to be a great movie. And it really was. So I'll say those two.
Okay. All right. I'll throw in Bad News Bears. Walter
Oh,
Matthau.
yeah, I know. I love Bad News Bears. Yeah, Field of Dreams. I mean, you can go on and on and on. There's so many great, sports movies.
All right. All right. Well, that'll do it. Coach, I appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy. That'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase. Subscribe, rate, review, comments below, all that stuff. Smash the like button. Jim, go and have a great time. Say hello to my buddy Adam Moskowitz. Give him a
Uh,
big hug for me. All right.
I will do, and tell all your listeners to follow me on Instagram and on X on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm
Well, we'll
tweeting every day.
reading every day. So what we're going to do in our show notes here is we're going to put all your information. So if anybody's like, how do I find this Coach L guy? He sounded so exciting and fun. You can find it by reading the show notes. All right, Coach.
All right, guys.
Adios.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.